each day, welcome. Whether you're a long-standing friend of Paul's Place or joining us for the first time this evening, we are truly glad you're here. Before we start, I would like to acknowledge that we gather on the ancestral beaver hunting grounds of the Algonquin, Haudenosaunee, and the Attawandaron peoples, the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe people, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Lenni Lenape people, and the current communities of the Chippewa of the Thames First Nation, Oneida Nation of the Thames, and Munsee Delaware Nation. Paul's Place began with a simple but radical conviction that no one in our city should go hungry or feel invisible. From our food bank to our fellowship center in the heart of London, we show up every single day for people who are navigating some of the most difficult circumstances imaginable. They come to us not just for a meal, but for dignity, for someone to look them in the eye and say, "You matter." Tonight's panel brings together some of the most thoughtful voices working at the intersection of food insecurity and homelessness. We hope the conversation will illuminate, challenge, and inspire, because understanding the problem is the first step, but action is what changes lives. And action, as many of you already know, takes many forms. It looks like a volunteer showing up on a cold Tuesday morning. It looks like a policy advocate in a council chamber. And yes, it looks like the generosity of people in rooms exactly like this one. Every contribution to Paul's Place and to the wider network of organizations doing this vital work has a tangible, traceable impact. A donation funds meals. It keeps our doors open. It means that tomorrow morning when someone walks in uncertain and hungry, there will be something waiting for them. So thank you for your presence tonight, for your curiosity, and for caring enough to be part of this conversation. We hope that by the time you leave, you carry something with you, a new perspective, a renewed sense of purpose, or perhaps a renewed connect to introduce to you Andrew Brown of CBC Morning, who will be moderating our panel today. Thanks, Andrew.
Hi, everyone. Can we just get another hand for Nishta, who brought us all together here today? Got a chance to say hi to a bunch of you before we started. My name is Andrew. I host the morning show on CBC Radio here in London. So it's so good. This is a really important conversation. We have this great panel. I'm just going to be keeping the conversation moving. So I'm not going to do a ton of talking here, but you know why we're here. We're here to talk about homelessness and food insecurity and just these really intense, serious issues that are affecting all of us and this city and this community. So let's talk solutions today, right? So let's get right to our panel. Keisha, I'd like to start with you. Could you just introduce yourself? And I'm hoping that all of you could just let everyone know your connection to homelessness and food insecurity and this issue and the work you're doing to help.
Hi everyone, my name is Keisha. I am the food program coordinator at Indwell. I oversee all of the food security work we do in the London region. For those of you who aren't familiar with Indwell, we're a Christian charity that provides supportive and subsidized housing for people experiencing complex challenges. So often a lot of the people that are coming into our buildings have been experiencing chronic homelessness or some form of precarious housing. They often have complex mental health challenges, substance use disorders, physical disabilities, a combination of those things. So we bring them in, give them permanent housing, and then offer a wide range of supports in our housing as well. One of those, as I said, being food security. We do this in a bunch of different ways, offering meals, community programming, skill building, connecting them with outside resources. So yeah, that's my connection with this topic.
Hi, I'm Teresa Forrest. I'm a paralegal. For those of you who aren't familiar, paralegals are licensed with the Law Society to provide legal services directly to the public in courts and in tribunals. So over the years, I've dealt with a lot of different legal issues. Somebody may come to me with one problem, and we deal with a lot of various issues. I approach issues with my client in a holistic manner. The most important is to look at whether we can have, whether they have income or some kind of replacement income. Second, whether they have a place to place their heads at night. And third, and most important is that they are safe. So I have represented large groups of individuals and people one-on-one. I have represented a group of people who lived in a valley here in London and were unhoused. I have represented individuals that were at risk of becoming homeless, and I have looked after people who were victims of crime or loss of employment. People can come to become unhoused in a lot of different ways. I come from a unique perspective, perhaps, because I used their services many years ago as a single mother who found herself suddenly not part of a double income, but part of requiring to work. And I was part of the working poor there for a number of years, and can look at some of the challenges of not only the people who are unhoused, but the people who are right on the verge. So again, that's the perspective that I bring, and I'll pass it along.
I got one of these. Thanks. Is it Ken? What is this gentleman in the red sweater? What's your name? Richard, sorry. I got this new hat today. Richard gave me this hat. It says Big Fish Grill on it. I really like it. So thank you for the hat. My name is Kevin George, and I'm the Dean and Rector here at St. Paul's Cathedral. And, interestingly, I moved to London, Catherine Ann and I, about 15 years ago now. And we had previously lived some of the challenges that were in the city. What's remarkable to me when I think about the 15 years is just how much more difficult things have become for so many people, even in that 15 years. I was previously at St. Aidan's Church out on the west part of the city, but I was fortunate to be there because it was a community that cared to be involved in advocacy. And so that caused me to interact with me and the press. They said, that Kevin George, he's got a big mouth, but he's never downtown. So he doesn't know what's going on down there. Well, guess who's downtown now? So I'm here every day. I'm here in the mornings, the afternoons, and the evenings. And I've come to, that's my wife making a racket over there, but Catherine Ann. And one of the things that strikes me about doing ministry in this place here at St. Paul's is just how critically important it is for us to open our doors to all of our neighbors. Now, when I interviewed to come to this church, they were quite concerned about reaching out to the people in the high-rises and our new neighbors who've moved into the infilling that we hear about at City Council all the time. And I reminded them that I would be doing that work, but I'd also want to call our community to be more responsive at London Cares. And I'm proud of what St. Paul's has done, most especially certainly Paul's Place and the work that formerly St. Paul's Social Services has done for over 40 years. It started here with one person over 40 years ago who went to the then Dean, Percy O'Driscoll, and asked if he could open a cupboard with some canned goods because he knew some folks who needed some food to eat. And from that, we now have a program that sees 50, 60 people a day for a food bank, 100 plus people on Thursdays and Fridays for a hot meal. And there's not a Sunday, there's not an evening service here, there's not an opportunity for worship where we don't engage and interact with our unhoused neighbors. It's messy work. It's difficult work. And the people that you see here have been doing it far longer than I've been even thinking about it. And we're fortunate in this city to have the people who care the way they do. But what's critically clear to us is it's a problem which is not getting a whole lot better, and in many cases it's getting worse, and it's going to require effort from all of us in the city. From our perspective, it's a faith issue. In baptism, we commit to respect the dignity of every human being. Well, if you've walked in here today, you've no doubt walked past people whose dignity has been stripped away from them. We have to ask what we're doing. How are we addressing the dignity of every human being? So I am very fortunate to minister in this place in this time, because for me, I believe God is calling us to very important work. And each person here is a part of that work. All God wants St. Paul's to do is go join this neighborhood in the work it's already doing.
Good. I'm Chris Moss. I'm the Executive Director of London Cares. I have the very good luck to work with the 100 of the most incredible staff that you could possibly imagine. We operate in 4 different programs. We have an outreach team, and there's 5 different teams that go out and work everywhere in the city. Every nook and cranny you could possibly think of, they've walked deep into the woods to find people, in the back of alleyways, behind big box stores, anywhere that we get called, we go to. We have a beautiful residence called House of Hope with 48 units, and we house up to 56 people in that space who have lived for decades on the street. Some of the people that were in there now have 10, 20 years on the street. And so they're relearning how to integrate and how to stabilize and how to live, and it's a pretty beautiful space. We also have a housing stability team that works with folks who are in market rent, and they wrap around them and meet with them several times a week to make sure they're meeting their goals. Are they eating? Are they balancing their budget? Are they paying their bills? Are they getting along with their landlord? Are they doing very responsible things that every tenant needs to do? And they work with them day in and day out to make sure they're safe and that they're stabilizing and becoming part of community. And then we have our commons at 602 Queens Ave, which is the most amazing space in the city. It has a pretty bad reputation if you drive by and you look at it. And we put up with a lot on that corner, but if you came into the space, you would see 450 people being fed by St. Joe's Hospitality Center. You would see Indigenous services, OW, ODSP, financial services. We work to reconnect people with their families. We do basic needs. We have a washer and dryer set, and we have showers. We're the only one with a bathtub that I know of. I hope I'm not lying about that. I think that's true.
You don't want to lie about bathtubs.
We have a bathtub, yeah. And that space, we allow pets, we do vet care, we do pretty much everything you imagine. We have health care in the space as well. So I'm just really honored to be here today and to represent those beautiful 100 people that I get to work with.
Well, I'll go. I'm David Ferreira. I'm the counselor for Ward 13, which is downtown and the surrounding area. Born and raised in London, went to school here. My family is here. Most of my family is still here. And I've seen, in my life, I'm 40 now, but I've seen kind of the changes in just that, I guess, that relatively short time of what we've seen happen downtown and what we've seen happen in the city. I've seen, especially after the pandemic and the changes there. And I'm not your typical politician. I usually say I'm not a politician because I definitely don't fit in on council. I am very mission-driven and not politically driven. I have a mission and constituents say and try to bring things forward that are in the interests of the city. And that's, and I've had my contentious debates at council trying to do that. I'm one of the few that actually try to bring real accountability and transparency to council, which is why I would say I maybe don't fit in the best. But these are the things that I stand for. And the mission-driven aspect brought me into politics in the first place. Because here's a story. The real, I guess, burner that was lit under me that really kind of made me decide to want to run for council in 2022 was during the pandemic, my neighbors, a family of 5 who were in a rental, was seeking to somehow relieve them or relieve that individual of the tenants there, this family, because they wanted a higher rent. And they lived there beside me for, I think, about 6 or 7 years. And they were served an N12, and the N12 was basically saying that her son had to move in because her son needed a place to stay. She had multiple rental properties. And I also knew her son lived in the neighborhood in another unit. And so did the family at the same time. And I was very mission-driven then as well. I wasn't in politics. I was actually working as a business analyst at Canada Life at the time. But I am myself a landlord, and I myself have tenants. So I had a little bit of an understanding on the landlord side. And they came to me and they told me what was going on, and they were showing me the texts between their landlord and themselves. And I saw a lot of bullying and intimidation and just basically showing that, she's going to use her lawyer power and she's going to evict them and she's going to win this. And I was telling them, you can fight this. You can stay in this apartment, and I will help you as much as I can. And I was reminding them that at the time that this was happening, and this was in, I think, 2021, so it was right at the height of the pandemic, that the amount that was being charged rent was very high. And they were a family of 5. And the amount of rent they're going to be paying in another unit, if they even find a unit that's able to accommodate 5, was going to be substantially more. And because of all of the battling going on back and forth between them and the landlord, they just didn't want to fight it. They just didn't want to put up the battle. They thought they were going to lose, and they were pretty much just giving up, despite the amount of help I was trying to offer them. And they moved out. And they ended up moving into a place, a 3-bedroom apartment, and the husband was sleeping on the couch. And I was really troubled by that, because I saw this aggressive push to push this family out of their house. And I also saw after that the son never moved in. As a matter of fact, the unit was kept vacant for a year. So I remember after, I was taking pictures, and I remember I saw Canada Post put a sticker on the door, and I knew that no one was living there. So I went to the door, I took a picture, it was the son's name, and I was just thinking, they obviously have him living there on paper, but he's not living there in the unit. So I actually took a picture facing back so I could see into the living room, which was empty, and the Canada Post picture. And from that, I saw that, some are in the, housing market to strictly make money, whereas others are in the housing market to both, build some investment on their asset, but at the same time provide housing. And that was the kind of landlord that I was. And at the same time, I actually lost my job in 2020. And my tenants, one of them lost their job. And my tenant came to me and they said to me, I'm not able to afford my rent anymore. I want to move back in with my parents. And I was like, okay, I'll try to help you as much as I can. What can we do? And they said basically, I got to leave. I got to break the rent. So I allowed them to break the rent. And their roommate, the other tenant, didn't want to bring in another tenant because they were worried with the pandemic and COVID and everything. So I said, that's fine. And I ended up having to leave my place and put my apartment on Airbnb. So I moved in with my partner at the time, thank God for her, and I stayed with her, and I was able to hold on to the house. But I went to these lengths to be able to help my tenants because I approach things with a human lens. These are people, and everybody is going through struggles, especially during the pandemic. And then I saw my neighbor landlord going a completely different route. It doesn't matter all the struggles that are going on. She was willing to evict a family of 5. And it was at that point, and I would also say just reading on internet forums of how this was a very prevalent issue going on and on and on, that I saw that this was something that I wanted to speak up against, to fight against. So that's kind of what put me into wanting to run for office, and that was kind of the message that I was bringing forward. And coming to the door and showing that, for me, it's not about the politics, it's not about the FaceTime, it's about, the mission that I'm bringing forward. It's about, the fact that I actually am one to speak up for the people that I represent, no matter how many friends I may not make in the chambers. I'm here for you. And that was the reason I got into council. And this is the thing that I still do today. I'm still fighting for the people. As far as I'm concerned, I don't care about another election. I don't care if I win. I care about bringing the interest of the people that I am serving first. I care about making sure that they are heard at the table. So that would be, I guess, about me.
And thanks, David.
Yeah.
That's great. We'll bring Sarah in now, too.
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm executive director of Arcade Street Mission, and I'm really thrilled to be in a room filled with so many faces of people who are sympathetic to the cause. And I think if we went around the room, because I know some people here already, that lots of us would have intersection with this cause. Whether it's you work in the sector, you care about social justice, it matters around poverty. And I guess what brought me to this work is personal. So, you've heard lots of different stories. I grew up in poverty, and I didn't know that until I sat on the mayor's panel on poverty as an executive director, as an adult. And the reason I didn't know that is because I was surrounded by community as I was growing up, and community was the protective factor. Community was the reason I did not experience the impacts of poverty. And as an adult, I'm a proud mom to 4 kids, and I was one of 5 children, and I understand the struggle of everyday living in a world where things are becoming exponentially more expensive. And others have talked about the various reasons that people find themselves unsheltered, unhoused, and there are systemic causes. And so I guess what keeps me getting up every day and heading to Arcade is both the individual experience, people's everyday lives, and the struggle that they go through, and the belief that community can, in fact, make a difference, tied with the fact that we can and must make systemic change, that there is a need for about that today.
Yeah, and it's great to have all of you, and thanks all of you for coming. Give them a hand, yeah. So we're all on the same page. We all know each other now. My next question is a simple one, because you all spoke really eloquently about the work you do. But Sarah, I'll start with you on this one. How busy are you right now?
Well, I'm happy to be here. I'm sitting down and having a
break?
nice
Is this a
cup
break?
of water. It's very nice. We're super busy as an organization. Much like Chris, I'm here representing 100 staff who work very hard. We're coming to the end of a winter season where without great support coming into the winter for winter planning, our organization has, for the last 5 years, been planning and implementing scalable indoor resting space solutions at that critical time of year. And we're at the very sad precipice of closing those spaces, knowing that the issues on the streets of London are no better, that when we close space, we are saying, welcome to your home on the curb. And it is incredibly busy, with more than 400 people coming through our doors on the weekends when there is no consistent front door in our city. And knowing that weeks from now we will be closing those doors because funding is so inconsistent, and because we want to make it an issue about winter, or an issue about drugs, or an issue about other systems and their responsibilities, when really at the base of it, it's a human issue.
And I want to do a round on funding in just a few minutes, but just as we are right now, and you mentioned it, people show up at your door looking for a place to sleep at night. How close at this point are you getting to helping all of the people that ask for your help?
We aren't helping the people who come to our doors now. We're not helping the people that come to Chris's doors now. We aren't helping, there are multiple doors represented in this room, and I believe if we just asked the room, how many people aren't we helping, we would know. In 2020, the issue that we're solving, homelessness, was said to be about the number of people that you see in this room. I heard 150 people registered for this room. It was 200. Today we talk about 2,700, and that is known people who are in a system. We are in a crisis situation, and we're just tired of hearing about it. It doesn't change.
Close are you to doing the work you actually want to do and helping all the people you actually want to help?
It's a hard question. We have, like Sarah said, 2,700 people. At 602 Queens Ave, we have about 30,000 interactions a month. Wow. So an interaction is someone coming to the door, or using the washing machine, or getting a nurse, or having OW appointment, like 30,000 in a month. Our staff are exhausted. Everyone's tired, changing. And so that's where it gets really complicated. And I think where we struggle is that moral distress. And I didn't even know what that meant before I started working at London Cares. So moral distress for our team looks like 100 new people falling into homelessness every single month, and all we can give them is a blanket. And it's devastating. Their entire world is falling apart. They don't have connections. They don't have family. They are literally needy. But it's so devastating day in and day out. And sometimes we don't see our way out of that. And I know we're looking for solutions and we're trying to, it's hard to see past that need every single day.
Yeah, and Keisha, you work really closely with the food end of things. How busy are you?
I mean, all the people that are coming into our buildings are chronically food insecure. I think everyone here on this panel would kind of say the same in terms of the people that they're supporting. Food insecurity is definitely primarily an income issue at this point, whether it's because you don't have enough money to purchase food or food costs are too high or a combination of both, which is kind of where we're at this point. In terms of the work we do at Indwell, we have, lots of people on our waiting list to get into housing, working with the city to try to get people off the street that they have registered in their housing list as well. But, we're constantly having to provide our tenants with support, whether it's food access, education around food, and it's never ending. There's no concrete solution at this point. It's just trying to make sure they stay fed in a way that's nutritionally appropriate for them, culturally appropriate, is beneficial for them, that they actually want to eat instead of just kind of the stuff that would have been thrown away had some sort of food rescue organization not collected it from a grocery store or something else.
We could talk for another hour about all the food we waste, right?
Yes,
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. Teresa, you bring a really unique perspective here as a paralegal. What kind of demand is out there for what you're doing?
I talk in court and in tribunals all day long, so you guys could probably hear me at the back if I needed to. The legal community is absolutely overwhelmed. I am self-employed. I don't have any kind of income security myself. But the legal community is overwhelmed. The local legal clinics, my colleagues, are overwhelmed only dealing with people who are at risk of homelessness or on the verge of homelessness. They can't even begin to provide assistance to a drop in the bucket. The system is actually at a breaking point. The Landlord and Tenant Board is getting caught up, but there are not enough people out there and not enough resources to be able to appeal all of the bad decisions. There are people who need assistance just simply with things like having their documents commissioned so that they can get ID replacement. It may be something as simple as knowing how to appeal a decision or a denial of some kind of income. I personally, 1 year did 80% of my work pro bono. I can't afford to do that anymore. I'm never going to be able to retire as it is. But I can only take about 1 out of every 10 people that knock on my door. My Fridays going out and dealing with large groups. That may be an Indigenous community like Alosha, or it may be a group of people that have a cultural group where I can go out and speak to them and provide some knowledge to a large group of people. But the legal community is overwhelmed and after midnight, and I started at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Working. Thanks. And just before we go to our next question, Kevin, you talked a little bit about it in your introduction. This started giving a few cans away. Where are you now?
Well, I was just thinking about those interactions that you were talking about, and when I started doing the math, for this church, that means over 3,000 interactions a month. Now, this looks like a big, beautiful edifice. It really is, but we're a community of 100 worshipers on Sunday morning. We're not a big church. And Paul's Place, which is grown from that single cupboard to its own separate registered charity now, relies entirely on donations, whether that's through the food rescue. We couldn't operate. And, you know, like everything else in today's economy, and with the changing global economic environment, we're facing some really serious crunches. We had a board meeting just this last week where we learned from our new finance director that our giving last year, because most of our donations, we get some funding from the London Food Bank, which comes from folks like you who care about this deeply and write the checks or make the e-transfers. Our givings are down 50%. That's half. But our costs have only gone up. So trying to find a way to continue to do what we're doing, knowing that it's a critical part of what we believe is our mission. It's what God calls us to do, is to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, to visit the prisoner, to welcome the stranger. And doing all that work requires the effort of everybody in this city. And yeah, it's a day-to-day operation here. And thanks be to God for people like Nishta and Shala and Kevin Mitchell, who are staff with us at Paul's Place. We're a very small thing. We're not 100 staff, we're 3 staff, you know, and they work tirelessly along with an incredible group of volunteers who serve the meals downstairs and who run that food bank every day. But it's a day-to-day operation. It's not a small or insignificant thing that's going on in this city. But, you know, you're a church, so the city doesn't come to the church every day and say, oh, you know what, I want to help out the church. So, you know, there's that little complication. But let them know back there, will you, that it's a separate charity off from the church? We're happy to take city money any day of the week. So,
all right. So we have a big problem. It's growing, and you're all very, very busy, is what I'm hearing. Sarah, you brought up the issue of money. Kevin, you talked about the lack of funds there. I was just hoping you could give us a little peek inside, Sarah. Like, for an organization like Arcade, and an organization like yours.
Well, I consider it a miracle, much like Kevin. It's really challenging to fund this work. We know what the political winds are like. I don't need to go down that rabbit hole, but you know, government funding needs to be present in order for us to have stabilized services. What's really beautiful, and I think each person here would be able to attest to this, is to each government dollar, we are able to add those volunteer hours and those in-kind donations and those goodwill items that actually make those dollars go much further in terms of impact and care in our communities, and that's powerful. Arcade very much relies on those elements. But I would say this, we have to be disruptive in our efforts. We need to try different avenues. There's an ideal, you know, I would like ideally for every person to have their own home with a roof and it's individual, and that they're able to manage that space consistently with the right level of support for each one. That's ideal. The realities of our current environment are we have constrained resources and a growing issue. So we do need to ask ourselves as community how together, and we do this often, grateful to the people at this table and others, how can we do something of meaning to move people towards that home? And so at Arcade, the day in, day out, keeping it funded and keeping the work on track as we're coming to this precipice of ending of funding, you know, it means making it public. People understand, you know, it's not that there's not a plan and that it's not that there aren't people willing to serve, it's that we can't pay them.
And just so everyone knows, when does your funding run out?
April 1st. Okay. Yeah, we're just running right to that deadline.
And then if you don't get it, it's over?
If we don't get it, I mean, again, much like Kevin, we have great donors and people who support us, and we've planned ahead and all that good stuff. We will wind down slowly, and then we will do everything we can to make sure that the people who need the services get the goodwill, in-kind donations, all those things out. But we will advocate. Like, this is the beginning of advocacy, and we won't stop advocating. And it's important that citizens, like, you know, David was talking about listening to his constituents. These are citizens of our community. These are people who need their own voice amplified, because the people who are going through this difficulty actually have solutions in mind of how they can move forward, keep showing up. And so we need to stop funding for short periods of time and imagining we're going to solve the problem like overnight or next week or with the next $1 million investment, that's not going to do it. What's going to do it is consistency of care, innovative approaches, a willingness to say, this is what we have, how do we make it meet the most need, be open to various approaches, and it's not one size fits all, it's not Paul's Place alone or ARC alone or London Cares alone. It's actually all of these people doing the parts that they do best, touching the lives of people where they find a place of belonging, and then moving that forward in that community way to solve what is truly a community problem. It starts with connection.
And I think it really requires a collaborative effort from so many different organizations that provide this help, but really across all sectors. I mean, everybody likes to moan about downtown London, but if you're not down here, if you're not pitching in, you know, I live in the Northwest, and I hear people, oh, I don't go downtown, you know. But I recently went to a city council meeting for 5 hours, and I will never get those 5 hours back. Okay, they are gone for my entire life, and I'll never get them back.
It's a long life.
It's a long life, I hope. But I'm counting on a longer life afterwards. But I was there because we had, as an Anglican community here in the city, beyond St. Paul's, but we invited our other Anglican churches in the city to collect ourselves together to ask, after we had opened up during that cold snap for one night, we had folks sleeping right here on this space that you're sitting on today. And this is our worship space, by the way. This is where we break bread on Sunday morning. And it was important to us that we not over-sanctify things so much as to lose the understanding that there's no better place for us to allow people to sleep than where we break the body of Christ in this place. So we called some churches together and we said, what can we do to open up some space? And the folks at the ARC and London Cares, we were able to open some emergency space. But the reason I raise this is the frustrating part of sitting through that 5 hours that I'll never get back, I'll never get those 5 hours back, was listening to politicians. I beg your pardon, Sam and David, but listening to politicians talk about accountability and reducing funding from a 2-year model, which is, in the grand scheme of what we're dealing with here, nothing, down to a 1-year model, because of course these people helping the homeless must be accountable for the money they're spending, was incredibly frustrating as a ratepayer. I don't get that accountability on most of the contracts the city lets out. I certainly don't get it from a lot of the politicians. And so for me, I think what it demands of us, and I think from a church perspective, it demands of us to be the advocates who say to those who are, you know, you've all heard the metaphor, we're all downstream pulling people out of the river. The trouble is upstream. And we need to advocate. We need to advocate to our municipal politicians, to our provincial politicians, and our federal politicians. This is not a problem unique to London, right? I was just up in Sault Ste. Marie last week. Let me tell you, I saw the same devastation in downtown Sault Ste. Marie. This is a real crisis, I've heard that word used, in our country. And it's going to require all levels of government and all people of goodwill, of faith, and who care to demand that we do better. How do we allow this to happen? And people deserve to be housed. That should be basic. And if we start, people have a roof over their heads, and they have that dignity. And then we can begin with the wraparound services, with the kind of care you're hearing about here. But I wanted to say that as it comes to when I hear Sarah talking about funding, or Chris, and I know how much they rely on what the city brings forward, and to hear people get up and score political points for talking about accountability with people who are working tirelessly to save lives, really truly save lives. And on top of that, we have the provincial government piling on this week by removing funding for our safe injection sites. None of it helps us. And it's all for politics, and we should demand better.
Okay, I want to bring Councillor Ferreira. Go ahead. Councillor Ferreira, I'm sure you take a lot of questions in your day-to-day about this kind of stuff. And I speak to city politicians all the time. A lot of them tell me, look, the province is not holding up their end of the bargain. We're doing everything we can. A lot of this is not even really technically the city's responsibility, is a line that I get sometimes from other members of council. How do you see it? Like, what do you tell people or leaders of these organizations when they say, look, coffers are running dry here?
Well, I agree with
Give me money.
with what Kevin said. I was at that 5-hour meeting.
You're not getting them back either.
No, I'm not. And I was on the side of, what's the point of reducing these service contract agreements to 1 year? We should have 2, exactly what Sarah and Chris is speaking to. You need to have consistency. You need to have, you need to think about the operational side of everything because, in the end, there is an operation that has to be continuing to run, especially if you have employees working there, if you have people who have experience, if you want to have the best service you can, you need to have some type of sustainability and consistency. Now, I usually am on the end of trying to fight for that. I'm an embattled counselor. I'm definitely burnt out because I am trying to make sure that we do have that consistency because, even on our side, we find ourselves shortening these funding buckets, and then we find ourselves battling again and again and again in chambers and going to what Kevin's saying, to score political points for some, to save money for others, but in the end, it doesn't really help the situation out on the street. Now, for the responsibility part, that is a huge discussion because the province finds it very convenient to, and I say this a lot, I've said this before, I even said it today to someone, but the province has set up this system that puts the municipality, us, the city, between you and them.
Yes.
So when you are saying, what are you going to do about it? You're looking at us.
Yeah.
And we are trying to do what we can, but in the end, the ultimate authority and responsibility that would actually make some meaningful change is the province, who stands behind us and tries to help the public as much as possible and council to say, we need to really kind of reveal that. Because if we are in this situation where, the province is kind of stepping behind and we are trying to figure out what to do, we find ourselves in this continual argument, battle, discussion that really doesn't lead to much. And we at the city, and that's us. But in the end, if we aren't able to really kind of, reveal and remove the fog to show that, in the end, we need to be facing altogether the province. Like, I want to stand beside you and face the province. I don't want to be in between you and the province to say, what can we do here? And I'll end with this. The political points that sometimes are being taken is and say that we can solve something and get, the rage going on to get you to say, yeah, let's do something about that. That's wrong. I don't like that. Whereas, we aren't even able to do that in the first place. And that just confuses the narrative even more. And it confuses the general discussion because it just, disperses us and it doesn't focus, our advocacy to who we should be advocating for.
All right. I know some of you have come with questions, and we will open it up to questions, but I just want to do one more round before we get to that. And Chris, this one's for you.
Thanks.
The way we're going right now, the state of things right now, how much longer can we keep doing this?
Oh that's a really hard question.
Yeah.
I don't even know what next week looks like. Our fiscal year runs April 1st. We don't know what's happening. The reality of what we're working with now is precarity in funding. I have some that are month-to-month contracts. I have frontline staff who are making the lowest salaries in the city that are doing the hardest work you could possibly imagine. And at times, some of these staff are in food bank lineups with clients because they're also in precarity themselves. So how long can we keep doing this? Well, with the precarity of funding and the staff burning out and tired the way that we are, I don't know. I want to say, if we get solid funding, we're good. Can take care of ourselves. We can revitalize ourselves. We can figure that out. But again, when contracts are a year or, April 1st is around the corner, I don't know. I wish I could give you more.
No, that's the truth. The truth is the truth, right?
Yeah.
How about you, Keisha? How long can we keep going as you see it on the path we are currently on?
I think for Indwell, we're fortunate to be experiencing a lot of growth right now, and I hope that we can kind of help close the gap a bit in terms of those who are living unhoused. We have a couple of new buildings that'll be opening very soon, and one that's opening in a couple weeks, and we'll start getting some folks in there. But we are, a tiny, we can only build housing so fast, right? And you can only house so many people in one building. So I think the rate at which people are finding themselves at risk of homelessness or actually being homeless and also experiencing that food insecurity is not fast enough for us to catch up from our end in terms of getting people housed and getting them and stable and those supports in place. So there has to be some change, like Kevin was saying about the stream, kind of up in the system level to slow that progression a bit so we can catch up and get people housed and get people fed and get them.
Making significant change to services because of the funding environment, which is not the first time for us. So we're used to that. What I want to say is there's bigger systemic issues at play that people aren't always aware of, myself included. I'm so busy in the day-to-day, managing of the service that something I recently became aware of is that for every 1 unit of affordable housing that's being built or developed right now, we're losing 10. I don't think we know that as a society, as a community, that we invested in public housing, community housing for decades, and those agreements are coming to an end right now at a very fast rate. And if we just keep doing the same things and expecting different results, we're kidding ourselves. So we need to do some different things from a systemic policy level. We can't say, well, it's really hard right now, but it's getting better because we're investing in these good things, including my own organization. Thank you for the support. I'm so grateful we're serving. It will not make the difference if we don't get to the basic elements of what is systemic poverty? What is causing us to have housing that comes out of that affordable housing space? And the solution to that, so that we all have some ideas about how we might housing, it is places that have a missional drive to stay in affordable housing, holding those properties. It's very important that we actually talk about who's doing the developing of these spaces. And for service organizations like my own, please continue to have these discussions and hold our feet to the fire and say, is this the best way we can do it? Because I'm not sure it is. And I'll be the first one to put my own hand up and say, no, probably not. It's hard to think about the better ways when I'm worried about tomorrow's paycheck or the next meal or the next thing. If we could get to some stability, just like the community we serve, we need to stop the lateral violence. We need to stop the components that are keeping these organizations in poverty, asking those impoverished organizations to stand up against poverty mindset and poverty activities. This requires a shift in communal thinking about who is responsible for the systems that are bringing this on further and further. So I'm excited that we're saying, how long can we sustain this? Not much longer.
Okay, I know the councillor wants to jump back in, but you mentioned in your last answer, Councillor Ferreira, that you're feeling a little burnt out. Is anyone sitting here not burnt out? I'm asking genuinely.
Not yet.
Something here, Teresa? Yeah, do you want to? How are you feeling?
I'm working on it, Andrew, but I'm not there yet.
Hey, I worked my way through cancer. There's nothing that's going to stop me.
There you go, amen. You can't knock it down.
You just keep going. It's not that it isn't frustrating. We all know, and it's easy to point to the government. It's easy to point to the city. It's easy to point to the province. I mean, even the feds can do more with expanding the cooperative housing, which is not-for-profit housing, and getting that out there. There's plenty of things that can be done, but that infrastructure isn't going to change overnight. No. Those of us who are on the ground dealing with it one at the time can certainly point to a lot of the problems, but there are a lot of things that we can all do as individuals. Yeah. There are things that are so simple, which may require working and volunteering to teach somebody to read, helping somebody with English as a second language navigate through the paperwork. It may be allowing somebody to have their replacement ID that's gone missing because they've been jumped out on the streets or have had their items stolen, either from another individual who's in just as desperate need, or because the powers that be have come along and taken all of their goods out of their tent and gone through the NIMBYism of not in my backyard. It may be setting up and assisting with community gardens. It may be teaching people how to be resourceful with food and to learn to cook and not just heat up things in a microwave that I'm certainly responsible for myself. It's something as simple as putting a bathtub in and having those available. It's amazing to me how people think that it's only adults that are unhoused. The people with families. I mean, all of you out there that have had children, have raised children, grandchildren, what 2-year-old wants to stand in a shower? You know, you know darn well they don't want their eyes wet. Some of these things are simple and dignified. It's expanding the resources of mobility devices that are available for free and recycling them, because there's one day a week you can get help with that with one organization. All of these people in this room and the hundreds of people that work behind them do incredible work. And I have worked in various manners and with their clients, and not always, you know, I'm not always able to assist in everything that I would like to do. But there are things that you can do so that if you don't even have money in your pocket, you can be part of the solution.
Yeah, and I'll give this back to Andrew. I just want to add to that, you know, when we talk about these problems, it's very easy to get mired down in the means that all of you have come here today. Like there's over 150 of you who've decided to come out and talk about this issue. That's no small thing. You know, Mother Teresa said that not all of us can do great things, but we can all do small things with great love. When I see through our little organization, when I see Nishta or Jessica out here at the door, or Shala or Kevin, or any of our many, many volunteers, tend to someone's need and see that moment of healing. That's my hope. That's why I'm not burned out. We cannot allow all the noise to distract us from what we all know in here that we have to do. Whether we're politicians, priests, executive directors, whether we're out working on the street or we're doing paralegal work or we're running food programs, whether we're senior citizens or we're just teenagers getting started and full of vim and verve, it's very easy to allow this big old problem to become so big that we say, well, there's nothing can be done. It's not true. That's a lie. That's a lie that the empire wants you to believe, because the empire is getting very rich on this. The truth of the matter is we all have something we can do. And each small act of love makes an incredible difference. So I pray we all do that we not lose sight of it. Like I said, these are heavy subjects, so it's easy to lose sight, but I pray you please don't. Don't let the cynicism eat you. We've got to be the ones who keep holding up a light and not cursing. Absolutely critical.
Kevin was just telling me that he works 80 hours a week, so.
Yeah.
Impressive. All right, well, should we go to questions? Does anyone have any questions? Throw your hands up if you have a question. Or do we have one right here? Yeah, let's go.
Thank you. I think it's a question for, just what we've heard today. I'm thinking about Keisha's talking about, not being able to catch up. And, Sarah, and I know that that you're not trying to solve the problem, although we would wish it to be solved. And on the question of accountability, and I guess what I wanted to reiterate that just, from Teresa and Kevin recently, these people are doing incredible work.
Incredible work.
And not only are they out there doing incredible hard work, but they are actually succeeding, because
Amen.
What they do is help individuals. And what they're funded to do is to help individuals, either with wraparound supports in supportive housing, or guiding them toward supportive housing, or keeping them alive until there's room for them in supportive housing. And, this notion, I guess the question that I have for the other 149 of us is, can we agree that we can't judge these organizations for the fact that there is still poverty, that there is still homelessness in our community? We are creating poverty and homelessness faster than any of these folks can house people. And it's really important, I think, for us to recognize and to hold our politicians and present company accepted responsible and accountable for the way in which they're encouraging community to be enraged that these organizations haven't sought to continue to help the individuals who are experiencing those things while they work on those systemic issues. So, yeah, the question is, can we agree these are successful organizations, but with an impossible task that isn't really theirs at all?
But I do have some questions about how you're doing it. I'll probably start with the person from Indwell.
Me?
Yeah, sure.
Indwell.
I have questions for everybody, actually. So the question is, so last year in your balance sheets, right, for the Indwell?
Sorry, can you say that again?
For Indwell,
Yeah.
For your balance sheets, expenses, is public information. So I know that you guys spent around $14 million in salaries, $5 million in actual building cost and everything, and then probably like $1 million or $2 million in for the people, right? So can you just give us a breakdown about what the $14 million was spent on salaries and other breakdown, please? That's the question for you. And also, same thing with
Probably not a good one.
House of Hope. So just let me finish my questions for the people as well. For House of Hope, if you can give a split about how much would it cost per person per day to house somebody, it will be really great. This is for House of Hope. Same. Why is it not appropriate? Yeah, so if you can just give us a little split, that'll be really great. And then David, awesome what you did the other day at the Chambers. I don't know if you want to indulge a little bit more about what happened with your properties. If you don't want to name them, that's still okay. But if you can give us an understanding of what really happened, that'll be amazing. Yeah, and just the last, for the church, some of our people have been trying to reach out to some of the church groups, maybe in the winters, to open up spaces for the night warming places. We got some rejections from some of the groups. Maybe in the coming winter, if you can, open up your hearts and places for people, it'll be really great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just say I definitely don't think I'm the person to get into our financial things. That's not my area of expertise. We go as far west as we're just getting ready in Sarnia, and then we go as far east as Mississauga and have some buildings and areas kind of in between that. And as Chris and Sarah have mentioned, obviously I'm not the only person who works there. We have a large team of people who are doing lots of good work. We have our frontline staff doing work in the buildings, staff supporting those staff, our HR team, our finance team, so many different teams that make the work that we do possible. So I think we have around 300 staff within the organization, maybe 400 staff, and we're growing, which is great. But in terms of breaking down kind of where all of that money goes directly, I'm not the best person to answer that question, unfortunately.
And I'll go to your last question, I guess, but before I do, I just want to say that as somebody who's spent considerable time in the last few years supporting the work that Indwell does, if you can find an organization that's doing a better job at getting affordable housing off the ground with wraparound services for the money that they raise and use, I'll gladly I'll have you show me, because you won't find anybody doing better work than Indwell. So, secondary to that, your question to me about churches. All I can share with you, my brother, is that when we had our recent cold snap, we were moved here to open this space for that evening to sort of in part saved some lives that night. We were a pressure valve, really, to London Cares, to the ARC. It was before the additional funding. We're not ramped up. I know many of you know this, but when you open your doors to bring people in, it's not just a matter of throwing your door open and saying, come on in. Maybe you can do that in your home, I don't know, but the people who are coming in are coming with a lot of complex issues. And so you don't make a decision like that lightly. You take that decision making sure that you've got everything in place that's needed for care and safety for your guest, as well as for your staff and volunteers. Now, we were able to mobilize ourselves for that one evening. They were being held up until what, the 12th of April now, I believe, Sarah? Mm-hmm. And it's being housed at an Anglican church in the South End at Holy Trinity St. Stephen's. But the volunteers that are needed to make it happen, whether it's the food services or the assistance for tonight, are being provided by 8 or 10 different church communities in this city. And I can give you a calendar right now which shows you about meal programs in this city. There's not a day of the week that there's not a church serving a meal to somebody in this city. So for all of the stuff I see on Facebook and Twitter and the rest of the social media garbage about the churches not doing their bit, I got to tell you, if we remove the hours and the people and the volunteers that are doing that work right now from this city, the crises will go from here to here. And so I agree with you. Our churches need to do more. We're not perfect by any means. But certainly, brother, what I want you to know is that there's a lot of people in this city, a lot of people, at least in my faith tradition, who are following in the way of Jesus, who take this seriously enough that they're actually doing something. So that's the best answer I can give to you on that.
I'd like to just add that there's other faith communities in our city as well who are quite active, and we want to recognize that there are many faith communities that are participating. I do want to touch on how much money do we spend on salaries. If I've had that question once, I've had it 1,000 times. How much money do I make personally? What's my personal, people want to ask the question, how much is on administration? How much does it cost you to fundraise? How much does it cost you to do the work? And the reality is, we pay people. People come to work every day. This is the way they are putting food on their tables as well. They are taking care of families. They are citizens of this community who are putting in their blood, sweat, and tears, their energy, their effort, their education, their skill set.
Shoe fly.
These are very important skills that are being brought to bear. We have, I know, across this spectrum, we have nurses, we have people who are housing experts, we have social workers, we have people with all kinds of backgrounds who are providing this care. And the cost needs to be compared to the alternatives.
Yeah.
Because I can appreciate, looking at the sticker shock. I can. If I look at my personal bank statement, I go, I only have so much money. And if I'm a taxpayer, you kind of get overwhelmed. Like, how much money are we putting into these things? But let's compare it to the other places our taxes could go. I don't know the cost of every organization's per night cost, but I do know this, that on average, the intervention of housing first with supports is about 10 times less than the alternatives, including my own programs. My programs, the things I do, they're more expensive. We don't know the people, we don't know their issues. We have to be prepared for all kinds of eventualities. It's more expensive. Someone who is housed with the right supports and is stably housed, given the ups and downs and everything else, is less expensive to our taxpayer. Just want to say that flat out. We know House of Hope recently put out a report that those same people, and we can track, like, the same people who became housed are costing our system less in healthcare, in policing, in alternative care, in emergency services. And so when we gather those costs together, I realize it's not as simple as dollar for dollar and where does it go, because we need healthcare for everybody. And if you won't go to the emergency room, you want to be seen too. So we still need to keep our healthcare doctors, even if we get people off the streets. The thing is, this is how we build a community. And if we start to break down each cost to say, is this really worth it? Is this really the right thing? I do appreciate the challenge of, could we do it better? Are there other ways? Keep asking those questions.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's appropriate to say, should we pay people a living wage to do important life-saving work? Is this the right choice? So that's where the pushback, if you felt it in the room, I think it's a fair question. The answer is people need support in order to remain housed. Without those supports, it's a very quick journey for many back to the street, unfortunately. Are there other ways we could do that? Yes, sure there are. In fact, I loved your statements about, being a neighbor to someone, just loving your neighbor, showing up, helping someone out. Every human being can do that. Unfortunately, you can't always count on that day after day. Generally the cost of doing the work.
Not really. Over here, Andrew.
Yeah, he is.
First of all, thank you for organizing the event and thank you for sharing all this wonderful information. I am a newcomer. I came to London about 10 years ago. I graduated from Western and Fanshawe. Right now, I'm working at VON Canada and St. Leonard's. And in my line of work, I am supporting a lot of people that are living with disability, that are facing possible homeless. So they're not at the state of homelessness, but I know that one wrong step, they're going there. Yeah. And because of, being empathetic as we are, I also find myself in the dilemma of wanting to support them, but I know I have to, So how do we navigate, supporting them, redirecting them to resource while, protecting ourselves from the caregiver fatigue that we see every day?
Yes. It's a great question.
I think the being human part, right? We're humans first, and we're humans helping humans, and so being human is part of all of our experience. So thank you for raising that. I would like to highlight, to your point of who you're talking about. I would imagine Chris can speak to this, but we're seeing this on the street as well. The fastest growing demographic in London, Ontario, of people who are becoming unhoused at this time. So first experience of homelessness, new to homelessness, is the senior population.
Yeah.
This is a serious indicator of how the issue of homelessness is inextricably tied to income.
Yep.
That income security and people who are on fixed incomes are at high risk of becoming homeless in this current environment. And the disability is no less. People who are on ODSP, and again, I'd shout out to Indwell. Great model, because they'd be able to model that can actually sustain people on that. So, I would just encourage you, always be human. It's okay to bring your full self to work, and of course, we're responding to humans, and I think it's a very common experience to need to debrief with team, be recognized for the work that we do, and care for one another when we do this work. Thank you.
I just want to add to that. Okay.
Just before the question, Chris wanted to add something.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I just wanted to add a little bit to that. One is you can always call our outreach teams. They will come and support wherever you're at if you see people that are needing help. Also, our teams do training. So if you have an organization, you work downtown, you're part of a church, maybe a business, maybe a student group or a youth group, our teams can come teach you how to de-escalate, how to use trauma-informed approaches, and how to stay safe. But also remembering you don't have to do that. You can call our outreach teams for support as well. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nicholas. I'm a downtown resident. Very happy to be here in this beautiful space. Thank you so much, all of you, for your work and for the talk today. I thought some of the comments today were interesting with respect to antagonism between different levels of government. And what I observe in my political advocacy is that there's a disconnect between available cash, for example, the Housing Accelerator Fund, and how it could be applied to these problems. Like we see huge amount of developments in rentals, but not a lot of that money being applied to emergency housing. Mm-hmm. And some of you know, I also develop policy frameworks, and I'm working on a solution towards some of these problems. And I've been looking at what you guys are doing. For example, Cove's Landing has a centralized kitchen you guys are opening to support all of your other buildings. and I've seen some of the other work that you guys are doing, and it's incredible. And it can't be easily reproduced because it's really built on the passion and the hard work you guys do. But I've identified the possibility of using transitional housing as a means of leveraging support payments, the housing part of support payments, to help with payments, as well as possibly buying commercial spaces so that the city can use accelerator funds to quickly develop more spots. My question for you today, for the panel, is, do you think there are any other systemic inefficiencies within whole community response that can be addressed? Because I feel that the range of cost delivery and affordability issues at large are part of the main political conflict on the ground. So are there any solutions that can save us money with respect to delivery? Thank you.
Who wants that?
I didn't even hear it fully, so someone needs to start.
I don't mind just starting with, of course. Of course, there's things that we can do that are different. The issue is, no, we cannot meet the need in our community for any less money than we are already spending on this issue. We actually need much, much more. Yeah. That's not to say there aren't other ways of doing the work that can be effective, and there are other people in our community who are doing effective work. I just want to point that out. We're not the only ones, and people do it different ways. David talked about private landlords who are compassionate and making sure that people have homes. There are people who are working in volunteer groups and doing outreach and supporting. So yes, there are other ways, and I do want to recognize that. But from an efficiency and can we actually spend less money on delivering these services? No, we need a lot more right now. Get the people into those transitional housing. When people are housed, we can probably reallocate that back into the housing structure. I think it's really unfortunate that we keep on talking about how can we get more for less? How can we do more with less? When we are actually so precarious right now that we actually can't stabilize what's going on in our communities so we can think differently about the future.
That's right.
Well, and to add on to that, it seems like a lot when we're thinking of the municipal property tax base, right? It's taxpayer dollars. So it does sound like it's a lot of money. But I think people forget to look at that systemic issue. Billions and billions of provincial dollars haven't flown since 2018. Billions of dollars. There's 85,000 people in Ontario who are unhoused. This is not just London, and we're not doing the right thing, and this is the thing. I'm so thankful to Paul for what you said. The problem is that the issue has become that the social services are the problem, the people on the street are the problem, the fact that they do drugs is a problem, everything else is a problem. Yeah. But they're forgetting what the issue actually is. I've never experienced a situation like this. I've worked in nonprofit for 35 years. If the hospital waiting room is overloaded and they're waiting for 12 hours, you don't yell and scream at the patient sitting in the triage or in the waiting room. You don't yell and scream at the nurse. You know it's because the hospital is underfunded and you have a high wait time. In schools, in classrooms, when you see so many kids not getting the care that they need and EAs not getting paid and teachers are overburdened, you're not yelling at the teachers or yelling at the students, but for some reason, in this political atmosphere, we have problems because social services are the enemy and the humans that are suffering on our streets are the enemies. Yeah. And I think we need to really look at ourselves and say, what is it that we're going to do to actually fix the issue? 100 people every month my teams are finding new to homelessness. Right. 100 seniors, 94-year-old women, a 54-year-old woman, families with kids. Every single month. It's not their fault. Yeah. It's not because they didn't save enough money and didn't go to the food bank and budget properly. There are systemic problems, and I think we have to be really careful and understand it better, because we're not going to solve it if we keep just fighting with each other.
Thank you for that.
Sorry, my vent time.
Yeah. I just wanted
to add something.
Thank you for that, because I think the other thing I noticed in that 5-hour collapse of my life is we also pit all of these agencies against one another, not because they are, because they aren't, but they're competing for the same dollars, right? And I look at all this and I see, $680 billion for police services. You know, like we can go to provincial level, they're taking away money for safe injection sites. People are dying. Okay, so 70 people, that's an Air Canada flight out of this city. If we had a crash tomorrow and lost 70 people out at the airport, we'd be outraged. That's the number of people who die, at least this last couple of years, on our streets. We have agency. We get the governments we elect. We do the work we do or not do. And to the question that was earlier about, you know, trying to protect yourself, and I couldn't agree with you more. And I think one of the things I think about is if you want to hear a firebrand guy, look up Father Michael Flager. Michael Flager is a Catholic priest at St. Sabina's in South Chicago. He's been there for 25, 28 years. He could have gone anywhere, but he stuck with the pole people, he says. And I heard him speak when I was in Chicago a few years ago. And something he said stuck with me, and it's been a part of my practice ever since, for want of a little bit of advice from him to anybody who wants to figure out what they can do. Because it feels helpless when you see people in such a state. And he said, you know what? He said, Father Mike, you're going to be talking to that church full of people tonight. You're going to be talking to that church full of people, and they're going to be talking about what can we do, what can we do? And he says, and they're going to say, I feel uncomfortable when I pull up to the stoplight and I'm there asking for money, or I'm on the street corner and I want some money. And they're going to say, oh, I don't know what to do. I can't give everybody money. If I gave everybody money, I wouldn't have any money. And he said, for God's sakes, Father Mike, tell them, even if they don't want to give us any money, they can look us in the eye and say hello. They can look us in the eye and say hello. Perhaps they can ask us our names. These are people. These are Londoners. These are our citizens. For us here at St. Paul's, these are children of God. And if we strip away our narrow-mindedness and our judgment and our pejorative thoughts about why people are where they are because we don't understand it, and just think about somebody's baby. This is somebody's child. Yep. And that's what we need to remember. Because ultimately, you know, I spent 13 weeks over in Kensington in rehab for a broken leg. And a lot of people end up in there because they've got no home to go to be cared for. I do, but I still was there. Long story that you don't want to hear. But in my time there, I met 10 people who, when they were discharged from their broken bones, leaving Kensington in rehab, were going to no fixed address, or to the Ark, or to London Cares. And these are, to what you were saying, these are senior citizens. Every one of them, hip replacements, knee replacements, and they have no home. So, absolutely right. Child of God, people we need to love, and we're not going to nickel and dime this problem. It may cost us all, but believe me, it's costing us now, and we need to get a hold of that.
Anyone have a stronger closer than that? I don't think so.
No, we'll be hanging around.
I think that's where we leave it.
I want to thank all the speakers. I really appreciate that you took the time to talk to us today. This question is specifically for our elected official. I'm aware that the City of London gave Shmuel Farhi $4.1 million to redevelop his commercial structures for residential housing. I want to know who is going to be in that residential housing, and also whether the city is able and or willing to institute a vacancy tax, since so many of Farhi's buildings are empty, and we could certainly use them for affordable housing.
I would vote for a vacancy tax for commercial for sure. Sorry. For the vacancy tax, I'll start there first, and then I'll go to the office to residential conversion that you're speaking to with on Richmond there. When it comes to the vacancy tax, like, we're really limited at the municipal level. We can implement a residential vacancy tax, but when it comes to a commercial one that I believe that you're speaking to, it's provincially speaking, we are unable to do that. The province is the one that would actually stipulate something like that. They recently brought in a residential vacancy tax that municipalities can implement, but they didn't bring in a commercial one. So that would be the first answer. But I would support that because anything we can to incentivize not having recently, not too recently, but in the last term, I believe it was, we did get rid of tax, I guess, abatements or reductions for vacant commercial spaces as well. So there was a point where council would tax you less, or sorry, the city would tax you less for vacant commercial spaces, but that was changed before this term started. When it comes to the building that you're talking about, that's under the Office to Residential Conversion Program, where basically the city provides public funds through the Housing Accelerator Fund money that we have. We put $10 million aside, a little bit more than $10 million after we put that aside too, to basically incentivize the conversion of those vacant commercial spaces into residential. That is Oxford, and that is basically something that the city can do, and it's kind of a different tool rather than putting in a vacant commercial tax, because we can't do that, to also kind of incentivize to bring that unit back online. So that is true. Under our Office of Residential Conversion Program, there was some money put in to FHC to make that conversion. They haven't finished yet, but apparently it's getting close. There is no requirement who lives there, which is an issue.
But if I can say on that accelerator front, this property behind us here at 195 Dufferin was the Sifton headquarters, building that was owned by Sifton, land leased from here at the Diocese of Huron and St. Paul's. And we've, just because of that accelerator fund, been able to do a 60-year project with Homes Unlimited, which has now acquired the property from Sifton. Sifton pitched in a lot to help convert the property into housing from commercial, and 40% of the units in that building will be affordable housing.
That's true.
So that's a 60-year commitment.
Yep. And it will be completed soon. Actually, the grand
April
opening.
1st.
Yeah, the grand
April 3rd.
opening is very soon on that, so look out for that. And then there's another one I'll add to what Kevin said. It's called the Richmond Loft Apartments. That was the first one that was completed. Because there's no requirement for whether they're affordable or not with the incentive program, that's something that I wanted to see happen differently, but just the way the program was structured, that's kind of how it went. But Sifton did bring in the affordable component to that. But there's another one on Richmond beside one building over from the Richmond Tavern. And they were able to, under only the OTR program itself, they were able to bring in affordable, or not affordable units, but not market rent units either. It was much lower than market rent at the time. And that was the first one that opened too, and that opened up in, I think it was a few months ago, maybe even a year ago now too. So that program is basically to remove the vacancy of downtown. But they're only picking at, it's very limited on the amount of funding that we have for it. But it has seen some success.
I also, sorry, just to add another, woohoo. The gentleman over here asked a question, mentioned Cove's Landing. That building in particular was actually purchased by, or in part, supported by Derulo, who actually retrofitted that building for us. And then we also have the Village Soho partnership on South Street. For those of you who might be familiar, that's a bunch of different organizations from affordable housing like Indwell, with supports to just kind of affordable housing and market rent, all coming together with various different housing providers to create that into something that provides housing for various people and is around communities. So I think I just want to highlight the importance of these kind of partnerships as well when we talk about how we afford some of these things. You have companies that are making market rent units and apartments and buildings, but how can they support the work that we are doing as well, and kind of give back to the community in that way, which we are seeing with some of these partnerships that we have either just finishing up or have ongoing.
Thank you so much. I know we went a little over time, but thank you all for coming today. And thank you to our panelists and Andrew for moderating.
Thanks for having us.
No.
I know we are, our panelists might stick around. If you have questions, please ask them, but we can't extend it any longer. I know a lot of you over here, if you're feeling generous tonight, all of our organizations take donations somehow. So if you want to, create a payment plan or donate to our organizations or purchase something for us, please let me or one of these wonderful people know, and we'll be happy to send.
Go to bed. You got to get up.